Gender-based violence remains an unfortunate reality within our society and demands our urgent attention and action to address it. As we observe 16 days of activism against GBV,
the Gender-Based Violence Unit within the Ministry of Social Development has partnered with educators, social media influencers, and other concerned persons to host a series of discussions on the issues.
These discussions will be live streamed on November 25th and 27th and December 2nd and 4th on Mikey Live and other platforms. They will be aired each day from 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m.
Join us for this highly informative and interactive session. Add your voice and let's encourage each other to do all we can to rid Grenada of this terrible scourge.
Everyone deserves protection from abuse, violence, and harm. Let us promote zero tolerance for these actions in our country.
This has been brought to you by the Gender-Based Violence Unit of the Ministry of Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs.
Wherever you currently are locally or in the diaspora, thank you for joining us. Today, November 25th, marks the beginning of a period known as the 16 Days of Activism against gender-based violence, and the period runs until the 10th of December. During this period, the global community is united in a series of advocacy and educational activities that are designed to raise awareness and bring urgent attention to this issue of gender-based violence, which has so many impacts on our societies. Here in Grenada, we're beginning the observance of the 16 days with today's program, a conversation on the topic of men as advocates, educators, and champions for change against gender-based violence. This program is being brought to you by the Gender-Based Violence Unit of the Ministry of Social Development, Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs. My name is Tyrone Buckmeyer. I am the Director of Legal Aid and Counseling Clinic, which is a very close collaborator of the Ministry of Social Development and other social partners in our united fight against gender-based violence. I am the moderator for today's program. And my guests today are, first, Kenny James. Anthony Kenny James is the current principal at the Grenada Boys Secondary School, his alma mater. He has been involved in education and the trade union movement for the last 30 years. He is a former President General of the Grenada Union of Teachers and the Grenada Trade Union Council. Mr. James holds a postgraduate diploma in quality assurance in higher education, a master's degree in education with specialization in teacher leadership, and a Bachelorette of Arts in Liberal Studies and International Politics. My next guest, Marvin Phillip, has been an educator for 16 years, rising through the ranks from classroom teacher to head of department, member of the management team, vice principal, and now principal of Presentation Brothers College. He was appointed to the role at the age of 33. He is a firm believer in transformative power of education and views it as a critical vehicle for societal change, including the prevention and eradication of gender-based violence. My next guest, Dominic Gaspard. Gaspard has been involved in education for almost 20 years. He has a passion for young people and youth development. Dominic taught at an all-girls institution for over a decade. He was raised by a single mother. He has 5 sisters, and he's married to a beautiful wife. So supporting a cause like preventing violence against women and girls is a no-brainer for him. Dominic is also a poet and a Bible-believing Christian. And my final guest, last but by no means least, is Andrew Hitz Phillip. Hitz is a recording artist, songwriter, and music producer who was born in Grenada. As a music producer and songwriter, Hitz has a catalog of musical works that include songs like Tanti Woy, performed by Blacks, Michael Montano's Witch Doctor, Corinne Dubois' Pass a Button, and Iowa George's Come to Me, to name a few. Hits has also successfully transitioned into a performing artist, successfully making the Soca and Groovy Monarch finals in Grenada several times. Gentlemen, what a group we have here this afternoon. I look forward to our conversation. Welcome and thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
So, gentlemen, we're going to talk about this heavy topic of gender-based violence. In the last 2 decades, we have had a lot of interventions. We've heard a lot about gender-based violence as our society has struggled to deal with this scourge. But gender-based violence is not a new issue by any means. So to start us off, I would just like you to share some thoughts about, as you were growing up, what are some of the experiences or your introduction or your observances of gender-based violence in your communities as you grew up? What did you learn about gender-based violence, if anything?
Well, I would like to share. Go ahead. First of all, I like the fact that you use the word observe, because gender-based violence, as we know, is learned based on the exposure that persons have, whether it be in their youthful days or older. And growing up, I remember in my community witnessing certain behavioral patterns that, as a young man, you may grow to either accept or replicate, thinking that it is okay. To the point of sometimes recognizing, and I know this is not just violence against women, it's violence against gender, but particularly the one that stands out to me is men against women, and most times in your community, and sometimes the way in which these women are I don't want to say dealt with, but how the interactions with the women. And a lot of the young men, and including myself, I have witnessed these things, but unless you make a decision that this is not something that I want to adopt, then you follow in that similar pattern, and then this behavioral pattern perpetuates.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Feel free to jump in. Open conversation.
Tyrone, yes, you and I are older men.
What are you suggesting, older?
I'm just suggesting that we over 35 and over 40.
I'll take it.
Right? Growing up in Grenada, we have fancy terms now. Gender-based violence. The 70s, 80s, we knew nothing about that. What we knew about is man beating wife or man beating woman. Very often it stemmed from the rum shop. So a man goes to the garden for the day. From the garden is to the rum shop. From the rum shop is home. And when he gets home, whatever, maybe the food on the table was not covered properly. And he would scatter everything and blows. Now you heard about that, or you may have heard passing the road the cries of that woman. But you didn't dare put your mouth, because that is big people business. As we got older as a society, then you start to hear about abuse and spousal abuse, and now we're talking about gender-based violence. And it has evolved, because when we were growing up, the emphasis was more man, woman, husband, wife sometimes, but now you're hearing a lot of it in same-sex relationships. So it has evolved a lot. For us too, as a young boy growing up, you look at it and you felt, okay, I'm seeing this, I'm hearing about this, but it's like, these guys didn't go to school. So you say, as we use the local term, you say, fellas dunce. But today, we have per capita, we have more degrees in Grenada than anything else, but it still exists. So it's a serious matter that we have to give some attention.
For me, growing up, I'm not far away from you guys in age, by the way, yeah? Maybe an arm's length and a stone throw, but I right behind y'all. But we didn't have the terminology that we have now. For me, the closest I would say in terms of education about gender-based violence or that kind of thing is the thought or the notion that boys should not hit girls. So I grew up with that, boys should not hit. That was, I'm not sure where it was ingrained in me, but boys should not hit girls. And in my community, I was born and grew up, my formative years were in Trinidad. I saw a lot of boys hitting girls in my community. So that was a stark contrast to the principles that I'm being taught and what I'm seeing. The greatest challenge I had was seeing my mom be a victim of gender-based violence, abuse by her partner at the point in time. And one time I remember seeing my dad hit my mom. And I wouldn't lie, that broke me. I've never, there's still conversations I wish I could have with him about that particular incident that would cause that to happen, But the closest in terms of education was boys should not hit girls. But then seeing the stark contrast, the contrary, on an almost daily basis, and some days, even in my household, it was very hard to grapple with.
Please.
Yeah. So my thing was community-wise. Seeing, and again, there's a consistent theme in terms of the alcohol. Most times when some particular person is inebriated or under the influence, they tend to say, call it liquid courage? Liquid courage. So,
liquid courage?
So blame the alcohol to say, okay, under liquid courage, he could do this. But then afterwards, oh, I'm so sorry and I didn't mean to, and don't worry, don't think, I ain't gonna do it again. But then that pattern kept repeating. And what I always found interesting is how, I don't want to use the word program, but for lack of a better word, how people can be programmed. And the same people in the context of this conversation, we're talking about gender-based violence, men afflicting violence on women, right? So in the case of women, sometimes it was so interesting to me to see that a woman would be in this situation and be in it so long that eventually she starts saying, oh, if he hit me, he love me. And I found that to be such an interesting, mindset. It's like how you got to, and that kind of blew my mind. And then from that, I kind of, as we got more modernized and got access to a lot more information via internet, etc., I come to understand that yes, we didn't have terms to qualify the behavior and stuff like that before, but this behavior is patterns that's gone back into ancient times. And it's something that in our culture, I've also noticed we have been trained to turn a blind eye, to quote unquote mind your business. Yeah. So you could hear Miss Lady bawling out, oh gosh, he gonna kill me. And you culture to, nah boy, let me get out of here, yes? Yes. And you gone. And so it's so much.
Because even in the incidences that I've seen in my growing up, I don't have any recollection of anybody intervening. Yeah. I don't have. That was not the done thing,
right? Because at the end of the day, it was man and woman business. It was private business on the one hand, especially if you were younger as a child. How could you even intervene, even in your own household? Because if you try to intervene, you get blows yourself. So you just watch, you take that, you watch it and you behave. And then to compound that, especially in the 80s and 90s when some of us were growing up, it was so sort of normalized in song and popular culture, especially in calypsos, that to want to be the one to stand out and be different by intervening and try to get it to stop made you look strange because you were going against the grain of what was happening, right? So it became kind of normalized, and then we became, as you were just saying, Gaspard, you then became, or Hits, you became desensitized to it because it was such a rampant, regular, everyday occurrence that you learned to turn a blind eye to it, right? But here we are today as a group of men who I would dare say that we have a certain amount of influence in contemporary Grenadian society, from Hits through his music and the interactions that he has and the audiences that he has, to the two school principals, and Gaspard, who was a teacher and so on, and where I sit in my position as the director of legal aid. I am very concerned as an issue of gender-based violence because my agency is kind of at the forefront of dealing with it. But from what you said, gentlemen, are you concerned about how we're treating with this in our society? Are you satisfied that as opposed to the time when you were growing up and didn't feel empowered to do anything or felt desensitized because of the normalizing of it, are you concerned now that we must and should be doing something about it now that we're better educated? What's your feeling on that? Are we in a better place? Has education and all this advocacy and so on made us more aware? And are you seeing that reflected in society, especially when you look at young men and their interactions and relationships?
I mean, I know we're not going in any particular order, but as I began before, I would share, first of all, the fact that these men here were all exposed to gender-based violence and made a decision that they're not going to continue on that trend. It says a lot for us already. Right. That there is hope that we can eradicate this issue of gender-based violence on a whole. But also, even where I sit as principal of PBC, you can see a stark difference in how young men respond to the female teachers as is compared to the male teachers. Right? And that can stem from the level of respect and so on that they have for these persons. But in society, I think something that really scared me recently, that I came across this term in conversation with a fellow teacher called incel. Right? So I'm just sharing, it's called incel. And this particularly, I'm not too certain if it's rampant here, but with social media and so on, the exposure to it is there. And incel is simply involuntary celibacy, right? And what I've learned about them is a group of young men who see themselves as undesirable. So they develop a certain level of hate for women, and then after this now extended to hate towards the men that the women like, right? And if these things are not dealt with, we are on the verge of increased gender-based violence because of the growing popularity of these groups. And it's even crazy to see they mention how they communicate, like what a purple heart and so on. These little emojis that we often use, these things have significant meanings in that community, in that sphere. So here, it may not have infiltrated heavily here, but as we are where we are now, I think we need to further sensitize. And as I said earlier, I believe that through education, that we can eradicate this issue of gender-based violence, because we were all exposed to it. I've witnessed it myself. I could have copied such behaviors, and then this will now trickle onto my son, right? So we have to make that decision. How we, as men now, we made the decision, but we need to educate others so that they can make that decision as well to end it.
I want Kenny, I'm going to ask Hits, because as a younger man in the group, but also significantly because you're in the entertainment sector, right? I'm sure you come into, you come into contact, or you have an opportunity to observe up close young people and their interactions. Are you satisfied, or do you feel that the information is getting there, that young people are making different, better choices in terms of their relationships and their behavior in relationships, or do you think we've missed the mark with all the work we've done in education?
I wouldn't necessarily put it as simple as missing the mark. And I wouldn't also say that there is sufficient information amongst the youths in that way. What I would say is that there are certain ingrained behavioral patterns that the youth, that I don't want to say every generation has their things, but just as you were mentioning a little while ago, that they communicate with emojis in a way that some of us may not even understand. An emoji might mean something to them, and we might use it and they say, oh, don't use that, it means X, Y, Z. Right. So that alone in it says that communicating with them means that you have to almost translate the message in a way that is, palatable. Besides just translating the message, what I also realized is that there are certain stigmas. In recent years, there's been a huge conversation about men being too soft, or men not being macho enough, or what is a real man anymore. And so this identity of what a man should be has been in limbo for a little while, right? Yeah. And part of that identity, sometimes somebody don't want to come across as too soft, or peer pressure could affect them in certain ways. And I'm saying that to say, from the peer pressure perspective, in reinventing or figuring out what that new identity of a man should be, there's an opportunity to add this information and package it in a sense of, okay, a real man is a person who protects and empowers, and creates this new format as a man. Because back in the day, a macho man, even everything we're talking about, if a man meet up your wife, then he go in the shop, yeah, I got 2 slap, man, and ding, 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 and everybody in the shop laugh and ding, ding, ding. Even if somebody else doesn't agree, they feel intimidated by the group, that if they go against, not even they give 2 slap, but they might not rebut against. For example, we in a group, all of us here chilling, and you come in and say, yeah, man, she was ding, 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 I got 2 slap, and I tell her go and sleep, man, ding, 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 and the other 3 laugh and ding, 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 and conversation continue. Even if I feel like, okay, that wasn't good, I feel intimidated in the sense of, what if I say something and then he decides to give me 2 slap?
Right.
I don't have support over here.
And then you have no support on the side, right? Yeah.
You know what? Let me give him 2 slap too. And if everybody give him 2 slap, that is 8 slap.
One of the concerns I have is, and I've said this to some colleagues already, we are teaching tomorrow's leaders, tomorrow's adults, today with yesterday's tools, right? Let me backtrack a bit and give you a situation. A student came to me one time, bathing in tears. She is being harassed online, social group, Me, from the generation that I'm from, in order to make me cry, you have to hit me. My skin has to feel it. So I said to the student, well, why not leave the group? And she says to me the equivalent of, if I leave the group, I would not know what they're saying. And to me, that's the whole point. But what I am saying to that student is the equivalent of, to our generation, if you're being bullied, if you're being harassed, if you're being violated against, leave the school. Matter of fact, leave the country. It's not a practical exercise. It's not a practical solution to the problem.
Yes.
Bringing full circle back in terms of what has been done to educate and inform and so our youth against gender-based violence. We sit collectively, with the experiences that we have, the degrees and the knowledge and so on, and we plan these programs and so on. But what do they listen to? What do they find attractive, a program or an outlet to find the information, to get that sort of programming, so to speak? And personally, we have explored their world enough to reach them where they are. Right now, we're speaking to us very well. Because we know where we came from, right? But I think that there is somewhat of a disconnect with the generation that is now and us and those that came before us.
Tyro, who is the real G?
The real
That's
G?
the question. Who's the real G?
I don't even speak that, honestly.
Who's the real gangster?
Right, yeah.
The talk is about being a gangster.
Yeah.
Who is the gangster? Right? She wants a real gangali, a real gangsterly. That's violence. Thank you.
Control and
that is what is out there.
That, right?
So, as Hitz was saying, the young men are in a position where now you can't appear to be too soft. You may come from a good household, but when you step out there, when you step into the gates of the GBSS, when you step into the gates of the PBC, boy, it's a different persona you have to put on because you had to show that you are G. And when you meet the young ladies, too, you had to be the bigger G. If not, you getting left. Because mind you, the girls are beating the boys if they find they're too soft. Right? So there's a lot of pressure there. Now, you have a situation also where our generation, for whatever reasons, well, single-parent households has always been a part of Caribbean society and Caribbean development. But what buffered this was that we had the extended family that brought some support. Auntie, granny, everybody, even the neighbor, right? Everybody came together to scaffold us and to ensure that, hey, you grew up right. We've lost some of that. So now, whatever issues that are affecting your mother and your father who is no longer in your house, you feeling the brunt of that, and you developing a hatred, as the young man, developing a certain hatred for mommy. And when you get into a relationship with a young lady, it's that same kind of thing you're just going on with, because then we have scars, we have hurts, we're not healed, and we're taking that into our relationships. And we have more of that within our Caribbean and Grenadian society today than we did in the 80s and 90s. We would think that, okay, we've gone past it. But somehow, as the guys were saying, whatever programs are there, we're not hitting who needs to get it.
Later on in the conversation, gentlemen, we will talk a bit more about, so understanding that disconnect, what do we do? How do we do what we need to do as advocates, as educators, and as champions for change? Viewers, we're going to take a short break now in this conversation. We'll be back with you shortly.
Violence undermines our sense of self-worth and self-esteem. Let us take a stand against all forms of violence. My name is Nala Sam, Little Miss Grenada, the Spice Child, and I take a firm stand against all forms of gender-based violence.
This is a message from the Ministry of Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs, together with its social partners.
Violence destroys lives. Let's end violence now. I am Anya Chow Chung, Chief Executive Officer of George F. Huggins and Company, Grenada Limited, and I am taking a firm stand against gender-based violence.
This is a message from the Ministry of Social and Community Development, Housing.
Welcome back, viewers, and thank you for being with us this afternoon on this live stream. We're having a conversation on men as advocates, educators, and champions for change against gender-based violence. This is a program that is being brought to you by the Gender-Based Violence Unit in the Ministry of Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs as part of Grenada's activities to mark the 2025 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence. My guests today are Kenny James, Andrew Hitz, Philip, Dominic Gaspard, and Marvin Philip. So, gentlemen, as we look at what's going on, as we express some of our frustrations, our thoughts, what are your concerns about how our society treats with gender-based violence? And I'm talking here about in terms of a societal response, everything from public awareness building to law enforcement to legal to legislation. Are we doing enough to treat with this issue? We'll talk more about the educational component later and how we can play a role in that. But as you look around, are our laws strong enough? Do we have sufficient? Just your thoughts and concerns, if any, about how is Grenadian society in 2025 addressing gender-based violence, considering that we all acknowledge it as a problem that it is? Jump in, anyone.
Yeah, I feel like there's an issue that needs to, well, not issue, but issues that keep the problem where it is, right? And you mentioned law enforcement, etc. If I could just share one incident. A woman is being abused by her husband. She runs home to her parents. She goes in the police station. She makes one report. They say, all right, ting, cool. She makes second report. She say, okay, you're threatening me, ting. They do nothing. She go back, she say, he tell me you cut me up, you chop me up, ting. She goes back home, nothing. And until he actually takes a weapon and cuts her up, and now they have to be calling 911 and trying to get her rushed to the hospital, that's when the action happens. I'm using that incident to state that we have a very reactive society. Not just in GBV. In general, we have a reactive society. But in this specific instance, we have a very reactive society, that we wait until something actually happens and either someone loses their life or gets hurt within an inch of their life, and then now look to take action and try and see, well, okay, how did it come to this? When the signs have been there. And there's signs in a lot of instances. There's sometimes you see some women, they come to work with a pack of makeup on their face and so in some cases they just like makeup, but in other cases is what they're covering up.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Thanks.
We need to do more, I believe, Tyrone. Right. Think about it. When, as it's saying, when the action is taken and somebody ends up by Loco or by Bailey, there's a big outcry. All sorts of groups come out of the woodwork. And we have programs. Monday night, Tuesday night, we have programs. Every call-in program would focus on that. And I'm asking myself, where is the lobbying? We like a lot of politics in Grenada. Everything is politics. Where's the lobbying with our politicians to look at the legislations that we have and to see where we need to tighten it in the case of legislation? Where's the support that needs to be there for not just the victim, but the offender? Because in a lot of cases, you're dealing with power issues. So clearly, if it's the man that's the offender, he has some issues that has to be dealt with. If it's the woman, she too has some issues, either way. So where are the structures in place? How, as a man, do I walk into St. Paul's police station and tell the police, oh boy, my wife give me some blows up there, you know? What would be the reception to that? Boy, big man like you, boy? Nah, man. Don't bother with that. Right? And these are some of the things that we have to deal with, that it's not taken seriously until there's a major crisis. So I think there's need for us to look at this from a holistic perspective, not just laws, because laws wouldn't solve everything. We'll talk more about the education, but as a society, what are we sensitive to this issue enough to say something about it? Because each of us here have influence. We have a group that we have influence over. As Hitz was saying, when the guy comes to the shop and say, I give her 2 slap, if 3 men sitting, boy, what happened to you, shop it or what? Since when that becomes something to do, that sets him to think. And because testosterone speaks to testosterone, there could possibly be a shift in mindset, because he recognizes, hey, boy, this thing, them fellas ain't accept that. So I go look like a fool, being the one who doing that, and when I go by the shop, them fellas didn't believe in that. So we have to look at it, I believe, from a more holistic perspective and see what we can do in our sphere of influence to create the change.
Great, thanks, Gaspard. Marvin.
One of the things that, or one of the areas that I tend to look at, the law would, in my opinion, tell you what you should not do. But who is telling our young men and young women what to do? Right? We tell them, don't do this, don't walk on the grass, don't walk here, don't cross this, but where should they walk? How should they act? If you just take a drive through any community in Grenada, the region, as a matter of fact, the number of young men that you see outside after hours, early mornings, whatever, you wonder if it's a male society, because you don't see the girls, you don't see the women. They are at school or they are in employment or something of the sort, but the boys are left unaccounted for. I think if we have greater, as you say, community involvement, there might not be that person at home, but maybe within the extended family, also to say to our young men, come, let me show you this. Let me get you occupied in this area. And along with that, some conversation on how to interact with our female counterparts. Because I think in many cases, that violent outburst is coming from not being able to articulate what I think and feel at that point in time.
Right. Communication.
I cannot speak to how I feel, so you're going to feel how I feel. Because I'm hurting on the inside for whatever reason, right? Now you're going to feel it as well, because I don't know how to articulate it. So maybe if there are opportunities where we can shepherd our young men a bit better, so that they're not left unattended, but engaged productively, good conversation, some after-school program. I don't have the answers right now, here and now.
Yeah, but we need to get solutions, yeah.
But you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We need to have more engagement with our young men.
And we're in a time right now too where we have to remember the last 30 so years we've had some traumatic events. Ivan, Beryl, the pandemic. So on top of the regular stresses of everyday life, we've had some extra stressing events that has happened. So we have some generations now that are a lot more sensitive than how we might have been. So there's so many factors, and even with that, how normalized is the idea of getting therapy or going and speak to someone? How normalized is that idea? It's a foreign idea in our culture.
Well, I agree that we oftentimes hear about GBV after the harm is done. And more sensitization is needed, obviously. So throughout the year, it shouldn't be just a seasonal thing. So 16 days of activism, really and truly, should be 365 days of activism. And what I would also add, and it's nice, I appreciate the fact that Gaspard mentioned, how do we show the young men, and even the young women as well, how they should interact, how they should behave. And just last week, a past student came to me and he said, Mr. Philip, I left school, he was involved in painting, different social media work, and he said, Mr. Philip, I'm thinking about giving back to the school by starting what we call a gentleman's club, teaching young men how to interact with the opposite sex. And, for schools like PBC and GBSs that are all boys schools, right? As Mr. James mentioned earlier, is who's the bigger G in the school. And then when you go out now and you finally interact with the female now, certain times you step out of character to be a G in order to impress the young woman. And really and truly, is that really impressing? May impress some of them. Mostly, based on what they have a liking to. But that young man who came to me, he wanted to start what he called a gentleman's club, to teach these young men how do you interact, how do you speak to a woman, how do you be courteous to a woman, should you open a door for a woman, things like that, and that is part of what I would deem a step in the right direction, because really and truly now, not enough is done, right? And we need to increase.
Right, so I heard you all gentlemen, I want to make it personal, because I heard talk about law enforcement. They don't respond fast enough. I hear talk about, things that the society can do better. But we're a group of men who, James, I'm borrowing your expression, men who have influence. So how do we as men, if we're fathers, as many of us are, maybe even grandfathers, I'm not sure, but fathers, father figures, mentors, in a roles as principals and so on. So what is our responsibility? Do we as men have a role to play specifically around raising awareness about gender-based violence? And I'll tell you why I'm phrasing the question this way. I was in a position for many years of being one of the few men involved in this work. And all you wouldn't believe the kind of names I was called by virtue of the fact that I advocated and stood up for women's rights and for women's protection, right? Because there are few men willing to be brave enough to stand in front of the work. And so a lot of the faces that have been in the work have been women throughout all of my professional experience. And women who have done so much and given so much, but then at the end of the day, they're even labeled in a kind of way because people feel they're too concerned. So now, Kenny, big man Kenny, principal of GBSS and thing, do you have a role as a principal? Do you have a role as a man? Do you have a role as a husband? And the same question replicates for all of you. And if so, what is that role? So let's talk about that.
Of course, I have a role, a major role to play. I have 750 boys on a daily basis, men of the future, men of tomorrow. And I've always said to them, once we could get it right in GBSS, that's 750 boys we're putting out there who could create change. We would compete with the PVC on the field. But the bottom line is, if the PVC gets it right with the GBSS, that's 1,000 boys. We could, 1,000 males, we could put out in the Grenadian society to create change. And I always say to my staff, and I try to live that we have to show, we have to be the models.
That's it.
We must be the mentors. We understand that out there, outside of the gate, there are father wounds. Outside of the gate, there are issues that, I mean, sometimes you wonder how these young people are dealing with the issues that confront them. But we have to create a kind of safe space where we can influence them and guide them in the right direction. Luckily for us now, we have it within schools 2 counseling departments. So there are times when boys would come and they share something and I say, hold on, I think you need some additional support. Who will you like to talk to? Because I have a male, I have a female. And there are boys who would open up more to the female, to the male. So you help guide them in that direction. But we, as leaders, as a principal, I have to mentor, I have to guide, I have to help re-educate. And it's important, I always say, that man talk to man. There's the language of man. Let's be real. This is Grenada. And if people find the guy who's talking about gender-based violence look like he's so manly, that's a problem. They find the lady that's talking about it look like she could beat a man, that's a problem. But it has to be real male man as how the Grenadian society sees the man. Talking to boys, talking to men. Because we are in a position too where we interact with fathers. And when you sit in a parent conference, for example, and you see the dynamics at play, father, boy, mother, boy, sometimes as a principal, you have to take charge and try to work this thing around to say, hey, we need to do better. Let's try this, let's try that. That's the position that we hold. And outside, because of who we are within the society, that transcends beyond the gates. Because when I walk in Mardi Gras, everybody knows, okay, that is Kenny. But this is what Kenny stands for. Kenny believe in that. Kenny don't accept that. Kenny likes stupidness. Right? So you're able to carry that influence beyond just the gate. Yeah. Right? And I mean, the fact that we're here this evening, there are men who would view or who are viewing this program who will be touched. Because here you have, I mean, look at us. Nothing wrong with us. Family men, big men, educated men, handsome men.
Yes, thanks for that.
Yeah. No, come on, look at us. Right? Yeah. And we could talk about this. And there are times that, as a man, you need to find a next man who you could chat with and share with. Because, as Hitz mentioned, the therapy thing is we're getting there, but Therapy for man is like doctor and man. You ain't going until you die. You understand?
Yeah.
But we had to kind of change, see how we could rearrange that men start to engage with men. Listen, brother, I find I have some struggles here. And we help to build each other. Very important.
Thanks, Kelly.
We have an opportunity, especially within the infrastructure of the education system and schools and so, we have opportunities in different subgroups. For example, my subgroup that gave me a lot of my values was Scouts, right? There's the athletics, there's a lot of activities that young men do. Even some of the same young men that might be sitting on the block, you go see them kicking a ball on a Sunday in the pasture. So within these areas and these gatherings, there's the opportunity to create that comfort and communication to be able to then, educate, but not educate in the formal sense that most people think of the word educate. But we not sit down and say, "Oh, what's going on, my brother? Everything good? What's going on with ting ting ting? What are you doing about that ting ting ting?" We don't have these conversations. We don't necessarily have this conversation. Very rare you'll see the boys come together and say, "All right, what are we doing today? All right, going to look for some girls, all right, ting ting ting," and they moving, they driving and the music blasting loud and they ting ting ting. You ain't gonna see them. You'll quicker see women. Very superficial conversation. Yeah, you'll quicker see women and I'm talking about, this happened to me at work and ting 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 ting. But we as men don't necessarily do that as much, which we need to, because communication is a huge part of it. As Gaspard mentioned earlier, so sometimes men lash out because they can't vocalize, they can't communicate their emotions or their mental state. So they resort to violence as a way of showing you how I feel. I'm hurting in this way, so I'll make you hurt. And so in these forums like whether it's cricket, whether it's basketball, in these forums, if we have where men gather, if we have amongst those men, we start normalizing the idea of looking out for your brother. Not looking out in terms of if somebody attack him, you jump in. But looking out in the sense of, "Oh, going on, brother, fine, things," and he say, "Oh, boy, I ain't working how long, I ain't have no money to do this. My son need this and that, and I can't check in, Because sometimes when you check and you realize that some instances, some cases when people, get themselves in these situations where they attack another person, is because they have some deep-rooted issues that they have not communicated, and they say the pot boil until he boil over. So communication amongst men, we have to start normalizing the idea of checking on our brother and saying, all right, discussing things and discussing real issues. Not the simple, boy, that girl look good there. We have to normalize it.
Right. Guys, in the interest of time, this conversation is going really well, and I wish we could go longer, but we have a limit in time. So, Gaspard or Marvin, you want to jump in on that particular question quickly?
I wanted to I'll be very brief, so I'll give Gaspard a chance, because you see, what Mr. James spoke about in terms of modeling, I think, and not just as educators, as principals, but as men in society, these young men observe us so much. And as you mentioned at the beginning, GBV is a learned behavioral pattern, right? And recently, a young man, a past student, came and he spoke to me about something that I told him about 10 years ago. To me, it was just some words of encouragement, because I think he needed to hear that at that point in time. But that stuck with that young man. So imagine the behaviors that they copy from us when they see how we treat women and so on, and they learn that behavior from us. That's important as well. And as you spoke of the gentleman on the block, if I am on the block, right, and I grew up amongst some tough young men. If I am on the block and a young man comes and tells me about how he slapped up this girl and so on, I'm going to tell him about it, right? And as men in society, we have to start to address these things head on, tell them about it, let them know that it is not okay, and I'm not going to applaud you for what you do, right?
But I echo the sentiments of my brothers here. There's a scripture, I think it's in Timothy, that speaks about watching your life and your doctrine. What you say and how you live. And I think, whilst, these gentlemen, well, all of us in some respects have large platforms to stand on, sometimes all it takes is one man to be a good example to one boy. And let that exponential chain take place. Additionally, I think as well, those of us who might have attained a certain level of success, or you name whatever you envision as success, right? We are all leaders in our respective rights. Do not shy away, discount, hold with disdain the same fellas on the blocks or in the shops or wherever, right? Because of the circles that we're in now, we probably gravitate to more, look at, we're having a conference here, and later on we might be in Pier 57 having and we're not going to meet those gentlemen there, right? When we do have the chance, go by the block, play like a domino with the boys, right? And you would find that when they see that, listen, this man is a man just like me, who is trying to be better than, and they can emulate. Young men have come up to me and asked me questions, hey, how do I deal with this? I'm never looking for that person to, but because I was in their space, because they're not going to meet me in mine. They're not going to come and knock on office door and say, can I, especially if they don't have access. So we bring it to them and show them, listen, we're not better than you, but we are striving to be. And these are the principles and so that we stand on. These are things that you can emulate. We can try our best to teach you. And it just takes one to help one. And that chain goes on.
All right, thank you. Viewers, you were part of our conversation on men as advocates, educators, and champions for change against gender-based violence. One of the activities being held to mark the 2025 observance of 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. My panelists will be back. We'll be back shortly. We take a quick break. Thanks.
Shatters lives. Let's break the cycle. My name is Zalika Peters, and I take a firm stand against all forms of gender-based violence. This is a message from the Ministry of Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs, together with its social partners. Violence shatters lives.
Against our women and girls, men and boys, is totally unacceptable and inexcusable. My name is Father Edward Mark, Minister of Religion, social worker, counselor, and a strong advocate against violence. Therefore, I ask Grenada to join with me to take a firm stand against violence of any nature.
This is a message from the Ministry of Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs, together with its social partners.
Feels it are the ones who truly knows it. But we can show empathy. Think what it feels like to be a victim of violence. If you don't like it yourself, don't do it to others. I'm Samuel St. Bernard, Planning Officer in the Ministry of Social Development. I take a firm stand against all forms of gender-based violence.
This is a message from the Ministry of Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs, together with its social partners.
Right, so viewers, welcome back. You're part of our conversation on men as educators, advocates, educators, and champions for change against gender-based violence. Now, this program has been brought to you by the Gender-Based Violence Unit of the Ministry of Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs. And as we have this conversation about gender-based violence, there may be some of you in the audience who may want further information about issues, who may want to report something just to get further information. So I want to just share with you some numbers. The Gender-Based Violence Unit's number is 417-6167. One of the key social partners working with the ministry, Legal Aid and Counseling Clinic. Our telephone numbers are 440-3785 and 3788. You may also be able to contact the Child Protection Authority, their number 435-0293, or the Special Victims Unit of the Royal Grenada Police Force on 400 or 911. These are all agencies and organizations that can provide further information if you'd like to get
further information about it, or you yourself are interested in some way becoming an advocate or influencer or educator or champions for change. As part of the conversation, my guests are Kenny James, Andrew Hitz Phillip, Dominic Gaspard, and Marvin Phillip. So gentlemen, before we took that break, we were talking quite a bit about our role as men to raise awareness and provide education and guidance around gender-based violence issues and how can we reduce it. But we all spoke about what we can do to help young men, boys in our sphere, young men. But what about the women? What about the young girls? There are so many, predominantly in Grenada's situation, when we talk about GBV, it's predominantly male on female violence. And as somebody mentioned earlier, there is the unfortunate reality where some women in relationships get to the point of saying, if he don't beat me, he don't love me. Or I have to do things to make him jealous so that he can show that he loves me. So we do have to recognize that there's a need for information and education and mentoring of our young women as well. Is that interaction different from what we will do with young men? How do we then interact with, interface with, and help our young women? I sit here as a person who is fortunate to have 8 children in my life, 4 males and 4 females. So don't start about whether I don't sleep and all that, right? Right? And it's interesting because they span different generations. My oldest is 31, the youngest is 12. And I am sometimes not sure how to have the conversations with the women, with the girls or the females versus with the men. So how do we do that? What is our role and responsibility to mentoring and guiding young women? And what's the strategy for that? That allows us to do it in a way that is above board, that is honest, that is transparent, and doesn't, subject us or them to unfortunate questions and accusations.
Well, if I may, I would say to fathers, I have a nephew that's father to 2 beautiful little girls and a brother who's also father of a daughter as well. And they have personally taken the responsibility to be present. So if our young women see what true masculine love looks like, what it feels like, then they're less likely to settle or more likely to spot the counterfeit when it presents itself. Right? I used to tell my students as well, as women, you are the prize. The boys will do what the boys need to do to attract you. If you accept, then they tick that off in their minds as an acceptable form of behavior. If you reject, then they have to wheel and come again. Right? And the thing about untrained boys, if not checked, they grow up to be untrained men. So if we educate and interact with our young girls and help them to, one, spot what genuine masculine affection looks like, and also help them to, stray away from the counterfeits, then they're less likely, in my opinion, to find themselves in relationships where the outcome could be GBV.
I appreciate that question because tackling GBV is a multifaceted approach. We need to take a multifaceted approach in order for us to accomplish what we want to accomplish. And particularly as a father, my daughter is just 6 years. I would say about. My wife won't like that. But, so my daughter is 6 years old, and in the home, it's important that as she observes the relationship that her mother and I have, she sees. And I'm not out there preaching that I'm the best husband, Sometimes I'm lazy, sometimes, but in our interactions, she has to learn from our interactions. And even with my interactions with her, I'll call my daughter, come and hug up daddy, come my little sweet, and say nice things to her, compliment her on things that she's done during the day. You've done this well, and so on. So she's seeing firsthand how I treat her mom, and she's also seeing how I treat her. So as Mr. Gaspard mentioned about the counterfeit, when these things present themselves, when these type of men present themselves, then a red flag might raise, and she may be able to pivot early enough before she's in that situation.
Thanks.
I love this. And I reflect on a crazy man, Sigmund Freud. And Freud It is crazy psychology, as we may call it. It says that the boy's first sexual experience is with his mother, and the girl with her father.
But not physical.
Not physical, right.
Just
now,
yeah.
As part of Grenadian society, you hear that is daddy's girl, that is mommy boy. And what the gentlemen have shared is very important. It is important for the young ladies to see what a real man is, how a real man should treat a woman. And that starts home, that transcends into society, even within the circles of the church. Because this is where they are and they must see it. Now, if you see it and it's genuine, you would learn it. And you're able to decide, okay, this is good, this is bad. Even as men, the way we would hug a woman says a lot. So you're going to hug a young lady, or let's say in the form of a greeting. How do you treat with that? Are you going to put your whole body up in her face? Or are you going to hug her in a way that it's not suggestive, but that she knows it's appreciation, it's comfort, it's not sexual? There's safety there. And this is something that we must be mindful of, even as men, because you don't want to come across as being sexual, because that defeats the whole thing. But there must be that genuine respect for the young ladies. From a spiritual perspective, you say the ladies are the weaker vessels. Well, then if they are the weaker vessels, then they must be protected by the stronger vessels. Right?
Not subjugated.
Not subjugated. Thank you. Very important. And so we must surround them with that kind of example, that kind of love. That once they step out of home, they're able to say, well, yeah, you love me, daddy love me too. Mm-hmm. And your daughter must be able to come and say, daddy, I see a fella down there, he looking good, you know. Daddy, this boy tell me that. What do you think about that? Right? That openness is necessary. And with that, our ladies would be empowered. We have to, I think we've gone some ways in that ladies must be seen and not heard.
The days for that gone.
The days for that gone.
Yeah.
And our ladies have to now.
Children must be seen and not heard. No, we're done with that.
We're done with that.
Yeah.
If you're in a situation that's uncomfortable, you need to deal with that. You have to know you have to talk. Mm-hmm. Right? Do what you've got to do. Deal with your business. Right? Because it's not going to, once it starts, you know, I often say to ladies, I taught in a secondary school in St. John. And I used to say to the young ladies, when we're dealing with the social issues in social studies, say if a man dare try to hit you, make sure you hit him back hard. And I say yes, because you see, if you just stay and take that, somewhere in his head, oh, so I hit her, and she take that, blows down the road. Now, I'm not advocating violence on either side, but what I want us to get is that once this kind of action in any form, man, woman, is seen or taken, there must be some form of action to remedy the situation and to deal with it. We cannot be silent on it, because if we are, the future generations will be in trouble.
I want to be a bit more of a contrarian, because we've spoken about some, I would say, ideal situations where the father is present or a father figure is present. We have a wide subsection of the society that is where the father isn't present. Yeah. Or maybe the mother isn't present, or maybe the parents aren't present and they're growing up with granny or auntie or etc. Right? And we have, it's so layered. It's more layered than an onion, if in my perspective. That we have a situation where teaching young girls, young ladies, teenagers, young adults, teaching them what, as you say, what the real men should be, as opposed to the counterfeit, what is acceptable from what is not acceptable. We need to find a way to do that in a broader frame, a more community frame, a more national frame. Because there are many who, you mentioned the first sexual experience. Even in 2025, there's some people, some young ladies and even some young boys whose first sexual experiences are with a relative or a parent, which is very unfortunate. And so, and not even just that, we also have when you talk about communication earlier, we also have the situation where there's a lot of verbal and emotional abuse that happens. The conflict resolution is not necessarily taught because maybe they didn't, the parent doesn't understand how to teach it, or they don't even know it for themselves. So there's so many layers to the conversation that there is no magic bullets to fix it. But that being said, the picture or the poster for this is being able to educate young ladies on what man should be, what is acceptable from what is not acceptable, and empowering young ladies to understand that they do have the power to not accept. Because there are many who tend to think that, okay, you know what, I can do better, so I have to take what I get. Right. Yeah. Or my situation is, well, I don't have an income, I can't take care of myself. He's taking care of me, so I will deal with that. Yeah. You know, so it's so layered that there is no magic bullet.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you know, as I think of the work we've done, you know, the society, the Ministry of Social Development and so on over time, we've recognized that it's important to move beyond just the don't do lines and the try to do better lines, and try to provide multiple avenues of support, everything from skills training, education, retraining, because for a lot of people who tend to stay in abusive relationships, there is the economic reality that they may not themselves be in a position to provide the financial support that they and their families need. So they stay as a way of, I'll grin and bear it because there are these economic benefits. So the society has to be looking at multi-layered approaches to address a problem that is very complex. There is no one face of gender-based violence. Earlier on, some of you mentioned earlier in the conversation, for example, about the fact that there was a certain type of person who it was thought to be the abuser in the community, the rum drinker, the drunk man. But we know from the work that we have gender-based violence in every level, every economic bracket in our society. So it's not necessarily for an abundance of resources or a lack of resources. There are lots of different things. And the major driving factors behind gender-based violence are about power and control, right? Abusers feel that they, by virtue of what they can bring to the relationship in terms of resources and material support, they can control, and they need to exercise that power over their partner. So we have a major responsibility to empower women and girls to be independent and self-sufficient to the extent that is possible. And as men, we must recognize that we have as much of a responsibility to helping and working with young women as we have the young men, right? I just wanted to put that on the table. So, as we begin to wrap up, I want us to think and share a bit, gentlemen, on, so what are some of the specific things we can do? The Ministry of Social Development has convened a group of men for the first of these 4 conversations because they believe that we need to see more men in this work. We need to hear more male voices. We need to see more male action. Kenny James, what are you bringing to the table? Beyond today, when the conversation is over, what are some specific things you see that you, from where you're positioned in society, at the school, in your community, at church, and so on, what are some of the concrete or what are some of the things that you can see yourself doing or helping us to do as a system to address this issue?
Well, first of all, I'm an educator. And when I think about education, I'm not just, as Hitz referenced earlier, not just sitting in a classroom and exchanging book knowledge, but that education is education for life. How do we present ourselves in our Caribbean sphere to create the ideal Caribbean society? And I'm passionate about the Caribbean society, the Grenadian identity, because there's a lot of things out there that doesn't belong to us, really doesn't help us. We like to jump on some of these bandwagons, but we have to sit and examine what do we need as a Grenadian society, and how do we produce the Grenadian man and woman who becomes that productive citizen, excuse me, who understands his role in the family, in the society, who understands that every time we have a violent situation, we're creating hurt. Every time a brother or sister who is productive dies, it affects the NIS. It affects our productivity. When a sister cannot go to work feeling comfortable because she is living in fear that when 4 o'clock she has to go home and what she might meet, or when a brother is in that situation, that doesn't augur well for us. So we, Kenny James, need to help in that education across the board.
Specific ways Kenny James is going to be helping.
Of course, I'm coming to that. As I said before, I have, on a daily basis, I have access to 750 boys. I have to mentor. I have to model, right? Because at the end of the day, I am their principal. On Monday morning, when I stand before them, they listen to me. So just as how we would echo, great is the GBSS. And everybody across the world knows what we mean when we say great is the GBSS. It is part of that culturalization of the boy. So it's the same way when we speak about issues as gender-based violence. We are creating that culture, that awareness in the boys. I am creating it when I speak about it, when I engage with them on a one-on-one. When there are issues, I am creating that difference. And I believe this is where it starts, wherever I have influence. When I go to the shop to play a little domino, or just to chill with the boys, and there are issues that come up, I have to remember that at the end of the day, regardless, I am a principal. So whatever I say in the environment is clad in principalship. There's somebody who may not say anything but who is watching. And so even there, I have to be aware that I have influence and that influence must be used positively to better the society and to empower brothers.
Thank you so much. So we can write down a couple of things from Kenny James, has your future contribution. Thank you so much. Hits, Hits now you, from where you are in the sector. What are you going to do? What next for you in terms of this kind of?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say what's next. I'll start with what I've been doing. So I actually did a song earlier this year called Hurt People, Hurt People. Right. And that song was based on me observing situations like this and putting it into storytelling, into music. Right. Now, that was my way of using my platform, as unpopular as the topic may be, and we do not like tough conversations. As unpopular as that may be, I took stood out in the rain, so to speak, and on the soapbox, so to speak, and said, okay, this is the situation, let's talk about it. Let's normalize speaking about gender-based violence. Let's normalize speaking about abuse. Let's normalize not villainizing the abuser, but understand, thinking of ways to understand and communicate with the abuser to get that idea of, okay, how did you get to this point? Why are you doing this? And how do we deal with the cause as opposed to the symptoms, right? And so from using my platform, two things I've been doing is one, like I said, did the song and tried to put it out there in a sense of, here I am as a soca artist and I'm singing about something that, you know, is a wider issue in society that's different. As well as how I intend to continue carrying myself. Like, for example, as a young man in Grenada, I and several other artists that I know don't wear our pants past a certain point. We try to dress nice. You'll see, if you notice, there's certain soca artists, you'll see them in a suit and try to make themselves presentable and disseminate positive messages, because we know that there are different messages coming from different arenas, especially in genres like dancehall, etc., etc. So all we can do is present what our beliefs and our values are and put that in the forefront. And as you see, try our best to lead by example. Now, that being said, I am not a perfect person. And I, for myself, know that there are instances where I've been manipulative in my speech and would have caused harm by manipulating an argument or a conversation to the point of just so I can win. Because I'm a writer, so I know to use words. So I might say, so you might have a point, but I could flip the conversation and use words in a way that by the end of it, you telling me sorry when I'm supposed to tell you sorry, right? Yeah. So I'm simply saying that to say we have power in different ways. We have power in how we present ourselves. We have power in how we speak. We have power in how we choose our values and our beliefs and how we show that to the rest of the world. And so my thing is to continue trying my best to continuously become the better version of myself. Note, I didn't say better than anyone else, because I don't believe I am better than anyone else. Yeah. But what I do believe is that I, on a daily basis, try to take account and see, well, okay, I could have done this better. I can learn from this. This is one of my shortcomings. I can be a better version of me tomorrow and continue on that trend.
All right, great, thanks.
Well, I mean, understanding the ripple effect, and as a principal, I see the value in, first of all, modeling for the students. I think that is crucial in terms of addressing gender-based violence. So modeling for the students, understand the ripple effect that may have. And also no longer being silent or turning a blind eye, because as was mentioned before, sometimes you may hear the neighbors quarreling, and not to be nosy, but sometimes it might be in the best interest to check in to see something happen. Not necessarily maybe check in, but you may be the one to inform someone that something is happening next door that you may want to check on. And also, I want us to get to a point where we eliminate the possibility of young men and even young women growing up and observing these types of behavior in the home. So if we understand the ripple effect and little change by little change, eventually such behaviors would not be displayed for the young ones to learn. All right? And I'm a firm believer of, as I said, modeling and ensuring that we see the reduction in that through the ripple effect of that modeling.
Thanks. Gaspard.
What am I going to do? Again, because of my grounding, there's a scripture that speaks of, I can't remember the exact reference, but wives being submissive to their husbands. The sentence just before that speaks about husbands loving their wives as Christ loved the church. So there's a pretext under which the wife submits to the husband. Right? How did Christ love the church? He was willing and actually laid his life down for the benefit of the church. So I am going to love my wife to that extent. And she's going to see and feel that love from me. I'm going to express that to my children, biologically whenever they come, as well as the children that are in my care through education and so on, so that they see and feel that here is a safe man to be around. I can speak to this man if I have concerns about, some masculine aspect that perhaps maybe a father figure who is absent is not able to translate to them, right? So I am going to first practice what I preach and create a space where if there's a vacant home, so to speak, and a child can feel comfortable to come to me and say, look, I have this issue, I need some support, either send them over to you or one of the agencies, but I mean, just to be a big brother, father figure, because a lot of our young people, boys as well as girls, they need positive male role models.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, I absolutely hate to say that we've come to the end, but the reality is time flies. But as we close, I want to just remind us that, as each of you said in the answer to that question, I'm not perfect. That we can each claim it, because that's the reality. We're not perfect. And this is not about sitting here to say we're perfect and we have all the answers, but to say we recognize that where we are, we can help. And we are willing to help. We're willing to give the support and the direction that we can give, even understanding that we too are works in progress. Because we have to show, a lot of the times people are afraid maybe to approach and to see it because they think, this man perfect, he will never understand my situation. So we have to be willing to say to young men, to young women, to older men, to people who've already abused, to people who are thinking about it, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be prepared to acknowledge that when behavior is wrong, we have to learn to change it, and we have to change it. So viewers, you were participating, or you were part of our conversation on men as advocates, educators, and champions for change against gender-based violence. This conversation has been brought to you from the Ministry of Social Development, the Gender-Based Violence Unit in the Ministry of Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs. And this is the first of 4 conversations that we're hosting this year to mark the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. So as we bring this conversation to a close, we want to thank the Gender-Based Violence Unit and the Ministry for allowing us this opportunity to host this conversation this afternoon. We want to thank the other supporters of today's conversation, George F. Huggins and Company Grenada Limited, that has provided some support for the hosting of the programs, and Legal Aid and Counseling Clinic specifically for today's conversation in terms of some specific support. We want to thank Mikey and his technical team, and as we prepare to leave, we want to remind you of the numbers that you may call if you're interested in further information about gender-based violence, about some of the social issues that we grapple with. If you're willing to volunteer to become an advocate or an educator or a champion for change, there is room at the table for everyone who's interested to contribute time, effort, and energy to making a positive difference. You can call the Gender-Based Violence Unit on 417-61. Counseling Clinic, 440-3785 and 3788. The Child Protection Authority, 435-0293. The Special Victims Unit, 400 or 911. The second program in this series of community conversations, Voices of the People community conversations on GBV, will be aired on Mikey Live on Thursday, the 27th of November, so that's in 2 days' time. We encourage you to tune into that program as well, and we really, really want to thank you for being with us this afternoon. Gentlemen, thank you for spending the time with me. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. The guests were Kenny James, Andrew Phillip, known as Hits, Marvin Phillip, and Dominic Ferro Gaspar. Thank you very much. Thank you, viewers, ladies and gentlemen. We wish you a very good evening and enjoy the rest of the week. God bless you all. Good night and goodbye.
Violence destroys lives. Let's end violence now. I am Anya Chow Chung, Chief Executive Officer of George F. Huggins and Company Grenada Limited, and I am taking a firm stand against gender-based violence.
This is a message from the Ministry of Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs, together with its social partners.
Violence shatters lives. Let's break the cycle.
My name is Zalika Peters, and I take a firm stand against all forms of gender-based violence.
This is a message from the Ministry of Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs, together with its social partners.
Gender-based violence remains an unfortunate reality within our society and demands our urgent attention and action to address it. As we observe 16 days of activism against GBV,
the Gender-Based Violence Unit within the Ministry of Social Development has partnered with educators, social media influencers, and other concerned persons to host a series of discussions on the issues.
These discussions will be live streamed on November 25th and 27th and December 2nd and 4th on Mikey Live and other platforms. They will be aired each day from 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m.
Join us for this highly informative and interactive session. Add your voice and let's encourage each other to do all we can to rid Grenada of this terrible scourge.
Everyone deserves protection from abuse, violence, and harm. Let us promote zero tolerance for these actions in our country.
This has been brought to you by the Gender-Based Violence Unit of the Ministry of Social and Community Development,